Welcome back to Charity All Stars, and we are counting down to the 2023 edition at the Vindico Arena in Cardiff last weekend in July. It's Saturday the 29th and Sunday the 30th, and we're touching in with the captains of the 8 teams involved. And today we have the captain of Ty Hafan. It's James Pepper. James, thanks for joining us on the call today.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure indeed. And we'll start with the 2023 season. It's just a couple of months until the event in Cardiff. How's Ty Hafan's fundraising going this year?
Yeah, it's going really well. I think we're around about sort of the 11k mark at the moment, which is a a great result. Especially, I think it's difficult for all charity and fundraisers this year. With the sort of cost of living crisis, and people are sort of holding back a little bit on spend. So yeah, we're sort of making good progress. I'm really happy with the team. A lot of the team, they're sort of engaged really early this year as well, where they're sort of thinking differently, and you see it across the teams really. That I'm in the captains group chat, and within there, people are thinking differently about different fundraisers this year. But yeah, it's going really well.
And for people who may not know that Ty Hafan, it started off as kind of a regional charity for the Cardiff events, but then became a fully fledged All Stars team. Tell us a bit about Ty Hafan itself.
Yeah, so Ty Hafan is a children's hospice based in Sully, which is in South Wales. They provide care for sort of for children with life-limiting illnesses, and also care for the families of those children as well. They do an amazing job, absolutely stunning. When I first got involved with the charity itself, I was always thinking that a hospice is a very, very sort of somber place, and I was actually quite fearful of and nervous about going to visit the hospice. But I'm at the hospice on a regular basis because I'm actually a trustee at Ty Hafan, so I'm on the board. And as a fundraiser, they are so engaging with volunteers, fundraisers, and families, and the children. It really isn't a somber place. It's a place where children can, enjoy pleasant surroundings, enjoy the facilities there with their families. But yeah, in terms of fundraising for Ty Hafan, I think my first year with Ty Hafan was 2016, where I was the captain of the team there. We had an incredible year that year. I think we raised like 26,000 or 27,000 that year, which was just amazing. Really good year. Following year, I think I was assistant to one of the other guys. I think there was a year out. But yeah, you mentioned about it started off as a Cardiff charity, in terms of the All Stars. It did go up to Sheffield, which was great to see, and to see that we could continue it, in that as well, and back to Cardiff again. So it's become quite a sort of stalwart in that sort of the All Star setup now.
Yeah, and we talked about before we started recording, and the kind of link in with hockey, and you mentioned it was how you got involved. Was with Scarlett's mum and dad kind of. And Scarlett became a kind of a patron, kind of almost for Ty Hafan, and a huge part of All Stars, and that's kind of how your involvement with All Stars kind of came about.
Yeah. So my sort of involvement probably predates the Ty Hafan. I played 2 years for prostate cancer up when it was up at Sheffield, which I really enjoyed that, and that sort of got me hooked on it. And sort of bought into what this is all about, and I'm sure we'll talk about the standards of hockey and things like that. But, a bunch of sort of rec hockey players, a bunch of retired pro hockey players, semi-pro hockey players, just doing things, in the spirit of All Stars, which is about having fun, raising a lot of money for these charities. But yeah, I think the first year where I was captain, which was the 2016, I believe, and that was the year where sort of we made Scarlet our mascot, and I'm sure Claire and Chris won't mind me saying, but you know, they allowed me to take Scarlet on around the rink to do a sort of lap of honor, and to see a beautiful little face looking up at the lights in the ceiling, and sort of, it was just absolutely, it just hits home why it's so important that we do these things for the charities. And also I think everybody within the Ty Hafan team absolutely buy into that sort of whole ethos that around All Stars, which is fantastic to see this year.
Yeah, and we talk about the links the charities have with the teams, and like you say, you've got that direct link, but the way the kind of the team supports, and we'll talk about the kind of the direct effect. So you mentioned the amount that gets raised. I know Ty Hafan are very good at putting out what it costs per day to run the facility, or to fund a nurse, or to fund whatever part of the care. So whatever we do at All Stars, you can see the direct impact on the work they do at Ty Hafan.
Yeah, I think it's because it's a smaller local charity. I think it's easier to get sort of direct access to what is the money being spent, what is the money being spent on, and it's something. As soon as I think the first, or maybe 2017, myself and the team visited the hospice, and we were sort of given a guide, a guide around at the facilities and what they were investing in, and also how much it meant to some of these families to be able to have some respite and some care in the facility. But then when you realize how much it costs to run that place, and how much it costs to sort of make sure they've got the latest equipment, and you know, to a certain extent, the equipment that was available to them 20 years ago is now times by maybe 20, 30 different devices. So it's ongoing investment they have to keep making for different sort of children's care needs, really. So again, it's why it's important for us to hold events such as this that can raise that sort of money.
Yeah. So talk about your team and the actual guys and girls on the ice. What's the Ty Hafan team looking like in terms of players this year?
Yeah, really good. So I don't know whether sort of viewers will sort of understand the sort of structure, but we tend to sort of have the first line is probably the most competitive lines. You know, they're sort of either retired pro players, they're semi-pro players. The guys can really skate and travel with a puck and shoot and stuff like that. So that tends to be the most competitive line. Second line tends to be a bit of a sort of a mixed ability. You know, you tend to have some sort of stronger players mixed with some players that maybe haven't played for many years, but still are good skaters. And then third line, it's guys having a bit of fun. You know, it could be absolute complete beginners, people who have not played hockey before, but they fancy having a go and raising some money for charity. So it makes it very, very it adds the humor to the event throughout. You know, we've had some absolutely magical moments with line 3 versus line 3, where, you know, guys have stepped onto the ice and have probably taken a couple of strides away from the boards, and it's the buzzer's gone for their time to come back, so they're sort of struggling to walk back to the boards in time for the next for line 1 to come back on. So yeah, really mixed ability. Yeah, the Ty Hafan team this year, we've got a mixture of men and women, like we have done for the last couple of years. I'm really proud of, you know, of the mix that we have within our team. It's the camaraderie we have in the team, you know, is fantastic. Pretty much it remains as is last year, that most people returned, give or take 1 or 2 people who sort of said, oh, you know, I'm having a year out this year, or I've got something on elsewhere in life, you know. But yeah, so we've had a couple of, you know, 1 or 2 new players step in, but pretty much the same team as we played last year. So we're looking forward to a good weekend.
Yeah, and when we see you on ice, we can see one of the shirts behind you there. But a bit of a new look for Ty Hafan this year. You've gone with the dark grey with the lime green, so a bit of a different look on the ice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've obviously stayed with the sort of white design for quite a few years now, and over the years we've played with it a bit where we've had the one year we had at T Haven itself, they've got handprints of all the children on the wall in paint. So we sort of mimicked that with one of the jerseys a few years ago, and had sort of a band of the handprints around the middle. Um, the white jersey, you know, we've always liked the white and the green. But then this year, when we were talking to the guys at Crosscheck, and you know, huge credit to those guys, they pull it out the bag every year. They're absolutely brilliant with us. What we said is, like, you know, let's go for something completely different this year. We like the sort of the blackout jerseys that we've seen. So we said, like, you know, let's give those a go, and just making sure it fits with the sort of logo that we have and the T Haven brand as well. But that one's from a couple of years ago. But last year's logo, last year's jersey, we had our badge, our little scarlet badge, which is a little rocket. We had them then placed on our left side. So, you know, traditionally you have your captain's badge or your A on the left side. We flipped that, and we sort of said, let's have Scarlet's badge closest to our hearts, you know. So that remains on the new jerseys as well, which, you know, again, really pleased with. But that jersey there was from 2018, I think, and that was it was signed by Ian Cooper. So the relevance to that is Ian Cooper was obviously, you know, a massive Cardiff Devils legend, you know, and when I was sort of in my teens growing up, him and his brother were just sort of running riot in the sort of British League. And I've always played number 55, and I took that from Stephen Cooper being my favorite player. Of course, I played alongside Ian Cooper, his brother, and it was 55 and 66. So I thought, brilliant. You know, it was just one of those things I suppose as a kid growing up, you never think that you'd play on the same line as one of your idols. And I know that's another thing that's great about All Stars is you got sort of some of these players like Steve Moria, you know, Steve Moria, like a legend playing on breast cancer care. And you know, to share the ice with those players and to share a dressing room with those players, and you know, enjoy the banter and everything is just something else, really.
Yeah, playing on the same ice with somebody whose name is actually hanging in the rafters above you as you
Yeah,
yeah,
isn't that crazy? You know,
yeah,
it's
definitely.
fantastic. And he's an absolutely brilliant guy. He's again, you know, there's no ego with this guy. You know, he comes to play hockey, he enjoys it. He's a fundraiser. He gets what it's all about. And there's a few others around the circuit that are also of the same sort of same makeup, really.
Yeah, and it's same for me as well. You kind of pinch yourself. I'm on the PA system. I'm announcing a goal scored by number 19, Steve Moria, looking at his name in the rafters and like it is
Yeah.
kind of pinch me moment. It's like you say, it's kind of what All Stars is about. We've talked about the obviously T Haven and what it means. And you mentioned Scarlett and Chris and Claire are obviously still a huge part of T Haven and of All Stars, and that's kind of what we've said to a few people. Once you're kind of in, you kind of All Stars doesn't let you go, does it?
Yeah, you do get hooked on it, and you know, you mentioned Chris there. Chris is actually is one of the new guys on the team this year, so he's joining. He's going to be our line 3 power forward because I don't think he's really sort of skated or played much in the past. So yeah, he's an absolute beast of a fundraiser, you know, and you know, he's climbing every mountain, he's running everywhere. The guy is just born to run. So you know, it's just but yeah, he's obviously involved you know, heavily again this year. Yeah, and it's great to have him on board. But yeah, I think it does there's so many people that sort of I think, you know, I know quite a few players that sort of came in as a replacement in prior years where somebody's dropped out last minute, and once they've sort of started doing it, they want to be, they're like, what's happening next year, you know, straight away. And on the All Stars committee, we often sort of joke about this sort of thing, like about next year, because we haven't had this year yet. You know, why are we planning next year? You know, so yeah, it's really it really is good. You know, everybody gets hooked on it.
Yeah. Has there been anything? Obviously, the big event in July, but anything special being done in the run up? Any special fundraising events? You mentioned Chris doing his climb every mountain kind of things, but anything major going on?
Yeah, so we haven't got any major Ty Hafan events, as I would say. There's lots of individual sort of quiz nights and things like that that are coming up in the next couple of weeks. You know, the team, as I say, the team are thinking completely different this year with regards to sort of doing more regular, smaller events rather than sort of one-off big sort of events. In the past, I've sort of organised a roller hockey tournament in Cardiff called Battle of the Biscuit, and that's always been successful. You know, just this year we just couldn't sort of really get the people together and get that moving. But yeah, you know, there's I could see British Heart Foundation have just done a sort of an event over the weekend, like the Big Bash, I think it's called. You know, that sounds brilliant. Sounds like it was a big success. And I'm watching the other teams as well. Is, you know, they're doing, you know, lots of the sort of quiz nights with lots of different raffles for different things. So yeah, it is about sort of individual sort of fundraising events really, rather than one big large one ahead of the All Stars. I think.
Yeah, and we have seen talking to a few of the captains, these kind of smaller satellite events, I've called them, where it's just an excuse to get people together, which is probably more since we came back from that thing that stopped everything for 2 years that we don't talk about anymore.
Yeah.
But like these events, say regular smaller events, just as an excuse to get together again and meet up in person,
Yeah.
ahead of the big show in July.
Yeah. I think that is a natural sort of progression of things, because with fundraising, you always go back to your loved ones, don't you? You go back to the nearest and dearest to sponsor you every time for everything. And when you fundraise every year, you end up sort of those people very quickly like, look, you've only just asked me 6 months ago, you know, can you know, so having events where you can interact with a much wider group of people is absolutely the way to go forward, because you haven't hounded them for, you know, the last 6 months. You know, it's a new group of people, and you know, you just open it up to a much wider sort of fundraising sort of base, really.
Yeah. Finally, any sort of message? Everybody's listening to this or watching this. It's kind of piqued their interest. They're thinking about coming to Cardiff at the end of July. What would you say to kind of push them over the edge and get them to come down to Vindico Arena with us?
Oh, absolutely. It might not sound the most attractive thing, a rec hockey tournament, you know, All Stars. Everybody that comes down to watch it, you know, little kids, older people, they'll see what it's about. And there's a lot of fun. It's very fast paced, so you're not sitting around waiting for things to happen. The games are very, very quick. You know, it's a bit like the wacky races when these line changes happen, things happen because of that. You know, it's a very well organized event. You know, everybody from around the rink sort of has a bit of a buzz about, you know, All Stars as well. So yeah, I would say if especially with families, the kids seem to love it. You know, I still see kids that come to the event now, and they're probably they've grown up a bit now, but when they were little, they used to think that we were superstars, you know, and it'd be like, oh, the players are coming to me, you know, and if you can put a smile on those kids' faces, you know, and like I said, with the Ty Hafan team, we invited down some of the children from the hospice, and it's absolutely, you know, there's still talk of it now at the hospice, you know, because it just brightens up their day. And yeah, I would, even if it's for an hour or 2 hours, I'd pop down on that weekend to just come and watch some of the games and enjoy the fun and help us raise lots and lots of money.
Excellent. Sounds like a plan. Well, you've got me hooked, James. I shall be there for sure. Appreciate your time today talking about Ty Hafan All Stars. We'll look forward to seeing the guys in their brand new uniforms. It's Saturday the 29th, Sunday the 30th of July, Vindico Arena. We'll obviously advertise your social media. Good luck with the rest of the fundraising, James, and we'll see you in July.
Yeah, thank you very much, Craig. See you soon.